Welcome to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. I'm joined today by my guest, Mont Handley. Mont, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to talk about starting a small business, and Mont works with small business operators and has received an award for his own small business, and is going to tell us a little bit about what he's doing. So we're very concerned about small business owners right now because we just went through an election season.
Absolutely.
And it seems like they're going to give us lots of jobs if we take care of them
and honestly,
give them opportunities, right?
The big news is that the job makers right now are the companies between 1 and 9 employees.
Is that right?
Yeah, statistically, that is where the jobs are being created right now.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So tell us about your company.
So I started Pittmoss, this iteration of it, in about 2011. I had actually invented a product back in the 90s. I was working at a nursery and I came up with an idea for a Pittmoss alternative made from recycled newspaper and organic additives. It was something I worked on for about 3 years at my kitchen table.
Yeah.
Came up with a stable formula. I started growing seeds in this product and I was like, this works.
So tell us a little bit about what that is. So what Pittmoss is a naturally occurring.
It is a naturally occurring product,
right? Yes.
But unfortunately it comes from a wetland that is highly sensitive.
And what is Pittmoss?
So Pittmoss is the layers of each successive year's growth of various sphagnum, moss, that just grow on top of each other. And as they grow, they push these subsequent layers down below the water line, and it keeps it from biodegrading, if you will.
Right.
3% of the Earth's land surface are sphagnum peat bogs, but this little bit of habitat, this 3% of land habitat, actually sequesters a third of all soil carbons. So as we're destroying these for filling petunia pots and geranium pots, we're actually releasing this carbon into the atmosphere, but even more importantly, we're degrading the habitat that would allow us to see carbon sequestered again.
So it sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Pittmoss is kind of a halfway stage for composting. If I'm composting it at home, when I'm completely ready to reuse my compost, it looks like dirt. It's turned into dirt, right? But at some point, it's kind of at a halfway stage. And is this Pittmoss something that's sort of like...
Sphagnum is actually a specific type of soil amendment that Cornell University in the 50s and 60s was promoting because they thought it was everywhere, and it was everywhere in the lower 48 states.
Yeah.
We have depleted it so badly that the lower 48s hardly have any sphagnum peatmoss left. We might have, in the Indiana Dunes, for instance, we've protected Pinhook Bog, which is really one of the last extant habitats.
So that's why they tell you to stay on the path, right? They don't want you step, and it looks like, but it's just weeds, right? And you're not supposed to step on it. Yeah.
But these habitats have been depleted. This is a specific type of soil mix, and if you looked at any plant, whether it's like in a greenhouse, nursery, a tropical plant, one of your offices, 85% of what's in that pot is sphagnum peatmoss. When people say, oh, you can grow plants in dirt, no, it's not dirt. It's sphagnum peatmoss and other amendments.
And is that valuable because of the nutrients and also because it's less dense and it has more air and
I think people started
water?
using it really just because it was a product that was abundant at the time. It was being promoted as a soil amendment.
Okay.
But it really, like for instance, my product Pittmoss, we make it in a factory, we make it from recycled paper and some organic additives. The product that's the peat moss from out in the habitat, it has weed seeds, mold spores, insect larvae, and those all have to be treated for in the greenhouse or nursery. Yeah. So you're spraying chemicals to control all those things, where my product is actually grown in a sterile environment.
But if you're using newspapers, you've got ink in there, right? And who knows what they're making that ink out of?
Well, I would say most, I'm not going to say all, but most inks these days are made from like organic soys. And and actually, we're really happy to, make an announcement that Pittmoss was just given an OMRI certification, so it's certified organic.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you've come up with this idea, you've studied this, obviously.
Sure.
Your kitchen table. How did this evolve into the business that you have today? I understand you you took a $600,000 investment for 35% of the company at one point, right?
Well, actually, that's part of the story of being on Shark Tank. In actuality, we raised 1.2 million.
1.2, okay.
And so I did give up a fair amount of the ownership, but I still am on the board of directors.
Well, so walk us through this, though. I mean, how do you get from your kitchen table to this board of directors?
So it's been a long stretch, and it's been about 20 years, and people will say, wow, you're an overnight success. I'm like, yeah, it took me 20 years to get here, but okay, if I'm an overnight success, it takes 20 years to do it. From the kitchen table, I started talking to people at Purdue University in West Lafayette. At the time, they had what was called the Business and Industrial Development Center. It's now merged into the Foundry and the Purdue Research Foundation and what everyone knows of it as today. But at that time, they offered me a small space, and I think it was a copy room, or I think I remember mops being stored in there too. And they said, there's a program called Small Business Innovation and Research. It was organized by Ted Kennedy and Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, and it was given to any small business.
Aren't a lot of things that they collaborated on,
Not
I'm
very
sure.
much, but this was one program that was a success.
Okay.
And so any department that gives money for research has to give like 2.5% of it to small businesses now. So this has become a very large program. It's now worth about $2.5 billion. 1 out of 4 people who apply for this grant will get it.
So this is out there now. Anybody can apply for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a very, very popular program.
What was the competition like?
So it is it goes before a panel. They review. I know several of the professors and deans here at Purdue Northwest. They actually sit on some of these panels. I was lucky enough to, after 3 attempts, I received one. So I am better than the 1 in 4. But so we received grant funding
to get this grant. You showed them your Pittmoss.
You have to so every department's going to have like different research goals, if you will. So like right now, NASA is looking at growing habitats on, say, the lunar surface or the Mars surface, and that's what they're focusing on. How would we run growing centers on Mars, for instance, without people? How is that all going to be automated? So that's the type of research that they're looking for.
So, okay, so you received the grant.
Received the grant. We had
So you're not spending your own money yet?
No, and actually that's the beauty of this program. You don't have to give any equity to the government, so you're still 100% owner of the company, of the intellectual property. So it's a great, great program to be involved in. We are actually going to host some seminars here later on campus.
What was the next step, though?
So we got the great research. We thought we were going to get a second phase that would allow us to build a small-scale manufacturing plant. Unfortunately, I never got the second phase. But I said to myself, if I'm going to do this, I'll have to do it on my own dime. I'll raise my own money. And at that time, when I was doing this research, it was also would be the first internet explosion, so Internet 1.0. Everyone was investing in those types of websites and things like that. Nobody was investing in a Pittmoss alternative. So I went back to work. I started grant writing for some local municipalities, ended up getting a job in Pittsburgh finally. And when I was in Pittsburgh, it was 15 years later, there was a lot of new business creation activity going on. There was a lot of issues around sustainability. And I decided to throw my hat back in the ring. This product is still viable. I went through an organization called Idea Foundry, and it was like an accelerator program. So they gave me some cash, they gave me some in-kind services. At the same time, I had given some product to a local greenhouse, and they were growing with it. They said, take all the land you need, take all the equipment.
So if I just interject here, so what I'm seeing is that this wasn't a case of you saying, okay, I want to do this, I'm going to make this happen, and then forcing this through. You had an idea, there was an opportunity for the grant, you got the grant, the opportunities weren't as, didn't stack up like maybe you hoped they would. There was some time that passed. It became a subject of interest again. And you got back into it when it looked like the environment was right for it, right?
Right, it was. And on top of that, this idea was it was an obsessive idea. It was like an elevator music in my head that would just not quit.
But you weren't letting it drive you. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes I've heard people describe their efforts like it's a football game. And if I try hard enough, I can make this happen. But it sounds to me that you were very sensitive to what was going on in the environment, and you were waiting for opportunities and capitalize on them. And I think that may make a difference between the.
Right.
I've just talked to someone the other day who started a restaurant. And folded after 4 years. And 4 years is like the marker usually, right?
Right.
You start a new business. And he, did everything he could, put everything he could into it, but it didn't work. And I just, I think the difference between what he did and what you did is he was trying to make it happen.
Right. I always said to myself,
Yeah.
the only way this is not going to work is if I quit. So,
Yeah.
and there was always something just kind of like, let's nudge it forward a little bit more.
Yeah.
But after
Yeah.
I got this.
I think the nudging is a good thing for people to keep in mind. But go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think of like, the metaphoric, like, rocks across a stream. You got to kind of keep hitting those rocks, and otherwise you're going to fall into the creek.
Right.
But after I received the money from the Idea Foundry, we built a small scale plant on this greenhouse property. It was a proof of concept plant. I cashed up my 401k. I quit my job. I ended up selling
you're all
my
in
house.
now.
I'm
Okay.
all in. And at the
Okay.
same time, I'm a veteran. I actually went to the military before I went to college.
Sure.
And a local company out of Pittsburgh called and said, hey, we'd like to do a story about you. It was about veteran-owned businesses.
Yeah.
And the day after that came out, I got a call from someone that said, hey, we'd like to nominate you for Shark Tank. They're looking for veteran-owned businesses.
Yeah.
And so that's where that all came about. So I got a call from Shark Tank and went on the show and got a deal from a couple of the sharks. And we raised the money both with the sharks and some local investors in Pittsburgh. And actually our plant's still rolling after 2 years, 2 months now.
Yeah.
And we just actually started.
Where's this product available if people are?
I was just going to mention that we just got distribution into the Chicago area. There's a product available in Northwest Indiana in the Chicago market as well.
So some people might have seen this already.
Oh yeah, it's available on Amazon. We have had it available to commercial growers, but now it's available to consumers.
Yeah, interesting. And how's it? What would I see if I'm in it? Where would I find this? At a
Like a garden center, and they're
yeah.
mostly independent garden centers at this point. We're working through a distributor who's selling it too. They're just scattered throughout the area. And there is a website on the Pittmoss.com website where you can find the location where you can find it.
You mail out Pittmoss to people, or?
So actually, there's a professor on campus here at Purdue Northwest that ordered some, and he's like, I really like this stuff. And so we're actually researching a new project together.
I don't know if I had to tell my wife, when the package comes in, I ordered some dirt.
Yeah.
I sent away for it because we have a lot of it in our yard. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. The Calumet Roundtable will be right back. Welcome back to the Calumet Roundtable. I'm your host, Tom Roach. My guest today is Mont Handley, and we're talking about small businesses. Mont actually created a small business, and he also works with other small business entrepreneurs with an incubator that's sponsored by Purdue University.
Sure.
So we were talking about your evolving to the point where you were sent to Shark Tank.
Sure.
Right? So what was that like?
It was a great experience, although I was really surprised. People ask me all the time, like, how hard was it to get on that show? And I say, I really didn't do anything to get on the show. There was an article about me in a veteran-owned magazine, a veteran-owned business magazine.
Yeah.
and they said, we wanted to nominate you for Shark Tank. And I'm like,
Yeah.
sure. We joked about it. My staff at that time, my team, we all like thought, that's such a joke. We're never going to get called.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you a little story, and I'm not going to swear, but I'll tell you what I said to the guy when he called me. I had an employee named Vincent, and his father was an investor in the business. His name was Vincent too.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who were the most relentless about, you're not going to get on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the payroll taxes one day, and I get a call from somebody, and they said, this is Vincent from Shark Tank Casting. And I dropped the F-bomb. I'm sorry, I know you have an august audience here,
that's
but
okay, yeah.
I said, I dropped
You
the
said,
F-bomb and hung up on him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I go back to paying my taxes, and the guy calls back. He's like, I'm so sorry if I offended you, but this is Vincent so-and-so from Shark Tank Casting.
Yeah.
We'd like for you to consider being on the show. I'm like, is this real?
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of it. It was the beginning of it, and 2 months later, I was in Culver City, California,
Well, I
shooting the
guess,
show.
these shows are actually looking for certain types of people and talent to be on. And, once they find that, they'll recruit you. You
Sure.
don't have to talk them into it.
I was very surprised at how
Yeah.
easy it was to get on the show.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on the show. What happens now?
So, you get in the first day, and it's all orientation. And the coolest part about the show, and I tell the folks that are involved in Shark Tank all the time, what you really need to do is kind of shoot what's behind the scenes. Because what they do is they bring in 60 entrepreneurs at one time, and they take over a hotel, and you're in a bar, and you're at the pool, and you're having breakfast with everybody, and you're just kind of talking with each other about their ideas. And it's a really, really interesting dynamic.
It's just a great environment.
Absolutely. And as time goes on, each person's going over to the studio and pitching, and they don't bring you back. So they sequester the winners and losers at a different hotel. So finally my time came. I went over. They give you a trailer. They give you the star treatment. Hair and makeup, everything.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous about my pitch. I was just so nervous about it. But then they take you and they give you a walk around the studio, and at one point they say, okay, we're going to take you down this hallway, and you're going to stand there for 2 minutes, and we're going to get your reaction.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason that made me more nervous than making me nervous about the pitch. And I went out and I nailed my pitch for the very first time in front of the Sharks.
Good, yeah.
And the whole conversation was actually about 2 hours, and they edited it down to about 8 or 9 minutes for the show. But it was actually really intense.
Yeah.
Kind of a
you
pitch.
didn't have to sing, right?
Didn't have to sing,
You know,
but
there was no audience
Yeah.
they had to please, no
Right.
clapping, right? It was.
I do know that if there's ever a blooper reel for Shark Tank, I will be on it because
You have to worry about Donald Trump firing you, right?
No. No, but Mark Cuban maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so then this airs.
The night it airs was just a
Yeah.
bizarre coincidence. My nephew was getting married in New York City the next day, and the rehearsal dinner was the night of the airing. So we took over a bar in Lower Manhattan, and it was the night the Islanders were in the playoffs, and we walked into the bar, and I told the guy, "Can we watch Shark Tank?" And when he turned it, everyone was like, "No, no,"
Yeah.
But then they saw me pitch, and they saw me get a deal.
You were a
with Cuban.
celebrity, yeah.
We never paid for a drink the rest of the night. It was a great experience.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So did that have an impact? When that was over, were you getting calls?
We were inundated with calls. And
Really?
Before we actually aired, because of we got an investment from the Cuban companies. They helped us get prepared for it.
Now you weren't appealing to people who were, needing Pittmoss for their greenhouse. You're appealing to investors and business partners and things like that. Mostly, right?
We pitched as a business-to-business
Yeah,
venture.
right,
So
right.
we really weren't pitching to a consumer product,
Right,
which is
right.
odd for Shark Tank,
Right.
because most of the things are consumer products. We were really glad we were working with Cuban because the week before our airing, we had 13 unique visitors to our website for the whole week. So 13. And the night we aired, we were getting 50 and 60,000 an hour.
Is that right?
So
Wow.
we would have
Were you
crashed
prepared to
and
handle
burned if we hadn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a great experience. I mean, a lot of great stories came out of it. We actually did realize right away, we need a consumer product because people from California, they were in the midst of the drought when my taping aired.
Yeah.
They were like,
You're going to
"We
ship
need
them a
this
little
type of
water
product."
with their Pittmoss? Was that the
Well,
part of the plan?
getting the product to California for the taping was tough enough because
Really?
there's very strict shipping requirements for getting product like that into California.
Yeah,
So, but I think if we had a product in California, we'd be selling it. Right now, it's still in the Northeast all the way out.
Yeah.
I think our farthest store right now is in Iowa, but we're selling on Amazon.com all around the country right now too.
Yeah. All right. So you're seeing some success.
Oh, there's huge
And
bump.
was that the big jump? Was the Shark Tank episode?
There was not a downside.
Because not everybody's going to be able to be on Shark Tank. So
Right.
you know.
Well, we got to jump from that, and
Yeah.
then the following year we were on the spin-off show called Beyond the Tank, where we aired.
Piranha Tank.
No, it's called Beyond the
Okay,
Tank,
all
and
right,
they come out and they show, like, after the investment, they showed our plant, they showed our employees, showed our product, and we actually did some stuff with a big national grower.
And you got some hits from that as
Absolutely,
well.
because we're in an industry that's sort of an old conservative industry, and the real telling that
Dirt's
we were
been around a long time.
yeah. We don't call it dirt,
Okay,
but it's the soil, the growing mediums. But the real tell for us was when we went into a trade show,
Yeah.
famous old international horticulture show in Columbus, Ohio, of all
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
We bought this tiny little booth, like in the back corner, the only one we could afford,
Yeah.
and we had more traffic than the people who had like the big 20 by 20 booths up front.
That's great.
We had our biggest Pittmoss
Because
competitors.
you were the guy with all the publicity.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it was like people were coming up and say, hey, I want to get a picture with Mont. And I was like, this is
Really?
truly bizarre.
You're offering photo opportunities as well. That's great.
at a horticulture show.
That's pretty good. So at what point did you get this invitation to the White House for the award? Was that?
Last fall, the end of 2016, someone actually had nominated Pittmoss to be a Tibbets Award winner.
Yeah.
We actually received our funding from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency.
Because you were recycling the
Yep,
paper product.
absolutely. It was, and actually, the focus of the grant was developing recycling markets for.
Yeah.
At the time we did it, people were really involved in recycling, but they were recycling so much they really were kind of damaging the markets, if you will, for secondary markets.
Yeah.
So they were actually in the midst of trying to develop new products to make a market for all these recyclables. And so we fit perfectly.
Yeah.
We ended up getting the grant from the EPA. Someone from the EPA saw the episodes on Shark Tank and Beyond the Tank and said, let's give this guy an award. So we were awarded one of the top 37 companies in the country who's been through the Small Business Innovation Research grants. And they told us while we were there, I'm talking about myself and our CEO, Brian Scott at Pittmoss, that that we're really one of the more successful companies out of the Small Business Innovation Research at EPA. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah, that's great. So in addition to this, of course, you're working with Purdue University Northwest, Hammond area,
Right.
Hammond, Westville.
South suburbs of Chicago.
And tell us about this incubator that
Sure.
Purdue's running and what's unique about it.
So the most unique thing about the Commercialization and Manufacturing Excellence Center, we call it CMEC. It's really a mouthful when you call it by its real name, but
CMEC is good.
CMEC is one of the most unique incubators, accelerators in the country, and I have seen a lot of them going through my process. Most of the incubators and accelerators around the country really are focused on getting you to a prototype, getting you to a proof of concept prototype, where we actually have the ability to take you to the prototype, but beyond. We can scale that. We can figure out your manufacturing needs, and we have lab space available for new manufacturing, automated manufacturing, where folks can actually learn what their costs of running the operation, what their capitalization costs are, what their rate of flow can be. All these things are really important. They're kind of boring to a TV audience, but really important to an investor.
It seems like one of the things that you benefited most from in your case was the publicity side of this. Does the incubator provide publicity opportunities? Does it give advice along those lines?
One of the first things I initiated was you have to learn how to communicate your ideas to people and be confident about it. And so we started a program through the Kauffman Foundation on Entrepreneurship called 1 Million Cups, and we meet every Wednesday. We give a new business owner, a new innovator, an opportunity to get up and give a presentation for 6 minutes, and then we give 20 minutes of feedback. We actually stream that live. We archive all those videos, and they're available for these folks to use as pitches later.
just as we're getting towards the end here, if somebody's thinking about doing something like this, what kinds of ideas do people bring in when they come to the incubator? Can you give us some examples?
Absolutely. And being in Northwest Indiana and South Chicago, it's an area where things are still made.
Sure.
You know, a third of our GDP is still manufacturing. So we actually see a fair number of people who are maybe blue collar in nature, just like I was working at a nursery coming up with a peat moss alternative.
Yeah.
We're seeing a guy who's going to be presenting at 1 Million Cups here shortly. He drives a bread truck, and he came up with an idea for like a cage that prevents smashing of bread. And this is like, these are the types of ideas that we're seeing.
Yeah.
People who are working at their job, maybe trying to figure out how it's going to be less impactful
so a couple
to them
other quick
or the environment.
examples. What are some other ideas?
Sure, absolutely. We had a company come and pitch an old-fashioned business idea of fresh delivery, delivering milk and eggs to people's houses. And today, when everybody's doing 2 jobs and a side gig too,
we may be ready for that again.
we are ready for it. The guy started out with himself and 13 customers. He's now got 3 trucks, and that was 7 months ago.
That's great. All right, one more. You got another one?
Sure. We had somebody come in and pitch just recently, a gentleman who's a lawyer who was doing all of these real estate appeals for his friends and family and everybody else. He said somebody should be doing this on an app, and he actually came up with what's called Turbo Appeal. It's based in the Chicago market, and he just raised $7.5 million to get his business off the ground.
So that's great. And this is Southside Chicago, Northwest Indiana.
Absolutely.
Well, one more.
Well, let's see.
Anybody come up with they deal with abstract ideas about?
Okay, so there is a local doctor who is a pain doctor. He will deal with people who are pain medication.
Yeah.
And he came up with a device that locks the medicine into this device until it's actually time prescribed.
Yeah.
And so actually we're working on that with College of Technology right now to develop the prototype. So that's an exciting project.
I get that. Yeah. Okay, well, so you're a wonderful example here to I think people who want to follow in your footsteps, and you had an interesting road that you followed. So we wish you the best, and
thank
thanks
you very
for
much.
coming on.
That's
all the time we have for our program. Thank you to Mont Handley, and thank all of you for joining us on Calumet Roundtable today. Have a great day.